Hello and welcome to Salt City Gamescast. This is episode 135.
We're getting up there.
My name is Nick Naylor, the Salt City Hangover Cast. Welcome to the show, Jared.
Hi, I'm tired and I feel bad.
It's been a rough one. We had a little get together last night, and it went long.
Yeah,
and we had a lot of whiskey. We had a lot of fun. But paid for it today. I don't know that I've been quite this hungover for quite some time.
I felt very bad when I woke up this morning and then immediately went and played golf, which was not the best thing to do. Thankfully, it was hot and I was sweating pretty profusely. And my girlfriend was just like, "You are sweating out the alcohol. Like I can tell this is not normal sweat. This is booze ridden sweat that's coming out of you right now." And I'm like, "This is a good thing."
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And then I cracked a beer on the golf course. Only one. I could only get down one, but that definitely helped. So I'm all right. But we're a little late recording tonight as well. So we'll see how this goes. We'll try to be somewhat energized for you all. No promises.
Yeah, all day I was like, "Oh god damn it, I gotta have a cocktail tonight. I don't want a cocktail today."
Yeah, I just want water
or any of that. And I was like, but I already have it lined up, and I want to do something different next time. So listen, this is where we are. But boy, do we have a pretty fun cocktail. I forget if we talked about the green chartreuse on the show or not.
I don't remember either.
But anyway, there's this liqueur that's made in France by a bunch of monks, and it's become quite rare, and it's in a lot of mixed drinks. And I really wanted a bottle, and then I was telling my wife about it, and she's like, "You mean the stuff we have in the back of the cabinet?" And she pulled out this bottle, and I was like, "Eureka, sweet!" So it's only a half bottle though, so I'm still gonna run into some problems, but it's a pretty interesting product. But anyway, the thing in front of us is oh boy, I had to play the pronunciation before we started the show. It's a Champs Elysees, and spelled Champs Elysees. So you look at it, and
it's very French.
Yes, absolutely. But this thing, you're looking at like some cognac, lemon juice, a little bit of that chartreuse, and some bitters. That's it. And it's good. It's not pretty. We actually made them the other night, and my wife put food coloring in mine, but she put green in there, so it looked terrible. But besides not looking pretty, I think it's pretty delicious.
Yeah, it tastes good. It is definitely my kind of cocktail. You know, it's definitely lemony. You know, citrus is pretty prevalent or present in it. But then you get some of that vegetal from the chartreuse. So yeah, no, definitely good. Your choice of glassware, while I know that it is actually supposed to be put in these, this is difficult for me. I'm just going to be completely 100% with you, man.
We're just following the rules.
They're pretty. It's pretty, but there's no way that you can drink this and look cool, in my opinion.
What do you mean?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people will disagree. Tell us when this comes up. You guys look real cool with the coupes, right?
Yeah, I don't know, man. So I believe we were talking about this at the barbecue, and through. What was it, through a work thing, or how did I?
Yeah, so my girlfriend's dad is in real estate, and he does commercial real estate, and he did a deal with a client, and the client is very not into booze, but he apparently has like a lot of booze, just for people, just in case they want it. And anyways, through the process of that deal, he essentially asked him, "Hey, I've got a bunch of liquor that I don't want anymore. Do you want it?" And my girlfriend's dad was like, "Yeah." And so I've gotten like a bunch of bottles of like, very easy to find whiskey, but it's nice to have it for like mixing and things like that. Sure. And then also a couple of bottles of 99 pineapples. So I told Nick I was going to bring one for him. Yeah. So that's your very own bottle of 99 pineapples.
We're going to
display it prominently in your liquor cabinet.
We are going to find some stuff to make with this. 49% alcohol.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I kind of want to crack it open and just try it. Is that the thing we should do?
Maybe that's what happens at the break. We
Yeah.
come and talk about the
99
99. So I will go and begin researching, or just make one of these things on the back, but it doesn't actually give you quantities. It's just like, take 99 pineapples and take coconut rum. And it's like, okay.
I think that they are appealing to their probably consumer base, who probably is not. This is not a artisanal product, Nick. I think that it is like a product to get fucked up on.
We're gonna find a banger. Okay, we're gonna get something.
Yeah. Yep. 99 pineapples and Malort mixed together. That's the recipe for success.
In other cocktail news, I had some ingredients for a Hemingway, which is essentially it's a modified daiquiri.
Yeah.
If you've ever had a daiquiri, it's really simple, like a white rum, lime juice, and full syrup, and I think that's like it. But anyway, we had those Hemingways last night. The main thing that changes there is that there's grapefruit juice in it.
Yeah,
you're a grapefruit guy. Where'd you fall on that?
I liked it.
You
liked
liked
it a lot. Yeah, I thought that it was fantastic. Very refreshing. Good cocktail to have. Summertime like it is now. So yeah, I was pretty high on it. Dan made mine, and I think that he did a good job.
Okay.
Surprisingly,
great.
Dan did a good job. Shout out to Dan.
I walked into the kitchen and I had written the directions like on the counter for people. And I had beakers of the juice, lime juice. I had already done the work.
Right.
And he's over there hand squeezing a lime into a measuring cup. And I'm like, the fuck are you doing? It's like right there.
That is funny. I didn't know that happened, but yep.
It was very, very funny. I like it quite a bit. I don't know how to gauge how many grapefruits to get when you're making juice.
Yeah.
So I've got a bunch of fucking grapefruits that are just still there. So now I guess I'll just make more of those. But I don't know. Like one grapefruit probably is like 3 or 4 ounces is the problem. So
yeah. There's a lot of juice in a grapefruit. You know what I mean?
They're very large.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, definitely good cocktails. You're doing well, Nick.
Oh shit.
Really growing.
I forgot to bring it out. I just got a sweet book.
Okay.
I will bring it out. It's like the cocktail codex, and it basically goes through 6 cocktails, and the argument is like these are the bases of all cocktails. So let's talk about how they're formed and fashioned. So I just opened it today.
So it's 6 cocktails that then are the base for all other cocktails.
Basically, if you can get these down, you can make and understand how everything works.
Gotcha.
Kind of the science behind it. So yeah, it was. It's a cool book. I'll have to bring it out for the next show. But in very exciting video game news, Sony has State of Play, is that what they called it?
I think so, yeah.
Big sigh. They just don't have much, dude. Like I will play they announced an Astrobot, and usually the Astrobots have been kind of tied to a launch or tied to VR.
Mm-hmm.
They're good. Like it's a very good platformer.
I feel like that was surprisingly the best looking game that was shown.
Yeah, it's just I mean, it's not quite what you want. That you wanted that in something else, and where it's like, hey, the big Sony game for this year is Astrobot. Okay.
Well, I think that they're banking on they led with Concord, which I think is the one that they're hoping is going to land and be the big one for Sony. But I have serious doubts as to whether or not that is going to land in the way that they want it to. They did, rolled out a trailer that was like slapstick, funny space, kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy vibes, and then they showed off a little bit of gameplay of the game, and it just looks like a pretty generic hero shooter, a third-person hero shooter. So yeah, I don't know, but I don't think that that's gonna light the world on fire.
I think it's pretty hard to make a competitive game that tracks anymore. Like they're really, I mean, we have a few examples, but like we have a lot that just come and go.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I don't see that this thing, when I watched the trailer, I was just like, I'll be blown away
Yeah.
if this thing is compelling.
Yeah. So that's that. I think that's because that's coming out this year, they announced. So, yeah, but outside of that, man, there really wasn't anything to get super excited about. It was the most lackluster kind of reveal show that I've seen in a really long time. And it's just kind of a sign of the current state of video games right now. And, it's obviously sad to see. And, I think internally they probably are like, yeah, I wish we had more to show, but like our process, progress on these projects is just not there. You know what I mean?
It's wild, and it's just kind of like they had, like last year, they had Horizon and God of War.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of just surprised that they just did that. If you can see what's coming the next year, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't adjust and move something around. But I guess in their mind, they just put them out.
I mean,
ready.
The one thing that I can say is they showed off, a lot of new IP, relatively speaking. And that could be good. Some of those games might actually turn out to be good, worthwhile experiences. But from what was shown, man, it was just very generic and kind of lackluster. I mean, they showed off 2 games that I think were developed by Chinese developers, both of which were like eerily similar in the way that it seemed like a Souls-like. I can't remember the names off of the top of my head for both of those projects, but they had 2 of them that they showed off, and I'm like, these I don't know if this is what you should be doing here. There just wasn't a lot of variety, and it just fell short, man. So I am deeply pulling for a Microsoft show that is better. I think it'll be pretty easy for it to be better.
They don't have to do much.
Yeah.
They pretty much show. You could borderline show me a teaser of Fable, and I will say it's better. Like it.
Sure.
I think the bar is low, and is that this week or next week?
I think it's this coming week. Yeah,
definitely before the next time we record, and then you have like Summer Game Fest. So there's going to be stuff, and it will be interesting to see if we feel like it's enough or just for the whole year. I really just have this suspicion that we're gonna have some nice time to go and deep dive and check in on other past games this year, because it just is not lining up like it did last year, where it was like, cool, three huge games in a 14-day span.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck are you gonna do? Which is nice, because that sucks, and it sucks from a podcast perspective and just wanting to stay up to date on games.
Yeah, there's an in between though, I would say, between just like a drought, so to speak, of not having any titles coming out, and then being inundated where you're like scrambling to play everything that is worth playing. So you will just have to see. I mean, maybe some of those games will be really good, and we'll be looking back on it and be like, oh man, they didn't, make a good first impression, but it turned out to be a good game. So I think that the Astrobot thing, while it's not particularly appealing to me, what they did show off of that game was cool. And they're clearly leaning into their IPs, with little Astrobot dressed as like multiple Sony characters. So that's kind of the bridging the gap. I think I've seen a lot of people that were worried about the prospect of an Astrobot game coming out, because they were like, the last one was all tied to the dual sense, and then also like was a love letter to previous consoles. You know what I mean? So leveraging those IPs, it will work, I feel like.
Yeah, and they need to break free of that. It needs a gimmick. Like,
right.
The mechanics stand on its own. They should just be able to make a good game, good platformer, and be fine.
Yeah. The only other thing that really, obviously interested me was Monster Hunter Wilds. That thing, that was the first gameplay trailer, even though, like, in air quotes, like, there really wasn't much. But, the Great Sword was showed off.
Great.
Yeah, so...
I just have that falls into the category of a game where it's like, I don't really need any info.
Yeah.
Like, none, pretty much. Like, I know what I'm going to get. They're pretty damn good at being consistent. Those things haven't really flopped for me. So it's like, yeah, I'll watch the trailer, but like, well, why? Unless there's some key new mechanic that I'm going to be seeing, then it's like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. That's an interesting thing. But after that, it's just like, I don't know. Like,
They showed off on mount combat,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool, I feel like. So there was like a scene in the trailer where the character was like on the palamute. I know it's not a palamute, it's like some weird bipedal bird thing. Shooting a gun at a monster. So that's kind of cool. There were some new moves that were showed off for the greatsword because, you know, I know it all. And
Sure. What's that?
And then there was some new moves and I was like, oh, okay. So we're expanding the kit a little bit, which I appreciate. And yeah, I mean, it looked good. It looked cool. I think that it's going to be, you know, hopefully a large open world that you can explore, larger environments for the hunts than we've seen in previous games.
Have they said day and date PC?
I'm pretty sure that is accurate. Yes,
it fucking better be.
Yeah,
I'm going to be so mad.
Yeah. I think it's coming on all consoles and PC day and date, if I'm not mistaken, which, yeah, I agree. Hopefully that is the way it shakes out, because they've handled, you know, cross save and pulling saves from like one version to another when they do inevitably drop them on PC. That's been a pain in the ass.
Sure. We did get a well, it was not in their state of play, I don't believe, but separately the Silent Hill 2, the remake, was kind of shown, and it was given a date of October 10th.
No, it was shown in the state
was
of play.
It?
Yeah.
Okay. Because it was weird because it also released, like, they announced that before the state of play, they announced that they were going to give info separately. It was just kind of an odd thing. But
yeah.
We haven't quite had a game line up like this for us because we always do the Halloween special.
Mm-hmm.
And this just seems like a no-brainer. Unless something really happens, I think that's the game for us to play for Halloween.
Yep. Mark your calendars. We're going to talk about Silent Hill 2.
And I'm assuming you've played it, the original.
Yes.
And I have not, so that should be interesting.
Okay. It's one of the most scary video games that I have ever played, just from like a setting and thematic elements. That thing's fucking very creepy and unsettling. So the prospect of it being like, you know, modernized and made to look gorgeous is pretty appealing, but there's also ways that you can fuck it up, you know what I mean? So it's a fine line
for sure. Hopefully we get some. I need a few more things to fill out the calendar. I can understand that it's going to be a slower year, but it would be nice to just have a couple other bigger releases that's like, okay, I got this. Like, we've got June's looking fine. Destiny comes out Tuesday. Elden Ring DLC comes out like 2 weeks after that. Like, that's pretty much gonna take care of my June. But after that, like, I don't know that there's jack shit in July and August.
Right. Yeah. Nothing like super big that I can think of. I'll have to go and take a look at a list. But
like, July's just sitting there for Team Cherry to come and say, hey, yeah, Hollow Knight's gonna come out.
God, dude.
And I feel like when Hollow Knight comes out, they're not gonna give us much time. Like, I don't think that they're gonna say, hey, here's the release date, it's in 9 months. I think for whatever reason they've been so quiet. It just kind of feels like, yeah, it's coming out in a month.
Yeah, I think that you're probably right there. They've had so much time to work on it. So it would be surprising if we got more information on Hollow Knight Silksong and it was like, yeah, it's not coming out for 6 more months. Like, I'm pretty sure they're gonna it might even be like, hey, this is coming out next week. Just that kind of thing. Like, I mean, it has been rated by the ESRB already, and there's like a posting about that. So that usually indicates it's coming sooner rather than later, right? So
for sure. So that I could really go for that. That would be I'd be very excited to play that game. I feel like I'm ready. I'm ready for that.
Yeah.
A really good dark one of those. Absolutely. Anything else as far as housekeeping, or are we?
No, I mean, I wish there was more to talk about the Sony's press conference, but it was so bad. It was so bad. They had to known internally, like, this is not going to go over particularly well.
Yeah, I do think, just in the back of my head, I think that within 6 months we hear from Naughty Dog. That doesn't mean that it's next year that the game releases, but I think that we find out what their next thing will be Right before the
It's got to be
beginning of the year.
Uncharted, right?
Probably, which is I liked the last Uncharted was very good. So I don't know.
You could argue we're hearing too much from Naughty Dog with Neil Druckmann kind of sticking his foot in his mouth recently.
They something happened behind the
Redacted.
scenes.
Yeah.
Clearly some shit happened that only Neil could do, because like Sony interviews Neil and then they release so a bunch of excerpts and like a paper or whatever talking about it, and then it's not looking good what he's saying, and then he's like, well, they're misrepresenting what I was saying, and they took it back, and it's just kind of a mess. And I don't know.
Well, the arguments can be made, and I see his point to a certain extent. Like, I think people freak out whenever they hear, leaders at businesses talk about like how AI is going to revolutionize the way we work, right? And I think rightfully so. I should add that people jump to the fact that, that means that people's jobs are going to be, deleted essentially, so that, an AI can do it, better. But there are also like practical applications of AI for like game development, like more tedious aspects that could potentially be streamlined in ways and make the whole process better. And so like, you got to give him the benefit of the doubt a little bit. Like it might be that's what he was referencing, but
I mean, I can absolutely understand that. Like you take like a Skyrim or those types of games where all these buildings have all these bookshelves. Yeah. And someone's going to make all these fucking books. And at a certain point, it's like, was that the art? Or is that the part it's just got to be done?
Hey,
like,
I'm Tom. I'm the apple guy. I sometimes will make bananas as well, but mostly apples.
Like, so I can understand it, but I'm extremely hesitant about AI because I think it is not in our best interest, or a lot of people's best interest in a lot of ways.
Definitely agree with that. But again, there are practical applications for game design that could be, streamlined, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just makes people's jobs easier and also, in theory, cheaper. And which is obviously a big problem that game development right now fucking has. So
someone needs to figure out why AI can't do hands, and that just needs to be. I don't like. Is it all hands on board to figure this out? Because there's a lot of people that are posting pictures, and it's AI generated, like with their kids or some shit.
Yeah.
And their kid just has 6 fingers. You're just like, what the fuck's going on? Like,
well, to be fair, like we take them for granted because we use them and like they're a part of our bodies, but hands are pretty fucking weird if you think about it.
Sure.
They're a little weird, Nick. So, the idea of like a machine looking at it and being like, what the fuck is this? is not super surprising to me.
It's true. I mean, it's hard to draw hands, so I guess that's just real.
Yeah, the Salt City Stoner Cast. Have you ever looked at your hands, man? So anyways,
amazing. All right, that's great. Not a lot of good game news. Hopefully, we get something in the next little bit. But Hellblade 2 came out. We've talked about the first one in some previous episodes. You recently played through it. I played through it 7 years ago, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we want to start here? This game is free on Game Pass, so that's a nice little feather in their cap. But maybe the best looking game, one of the best or best. Like it's right there close. Like
it's a beautiful thing.
Really, like jaw-droppingly gorgeous. And
this is like one time where it's like, I'm glad that I have like a very powerful PC to run this thing because it's fucking incredible.
It is really, it just, when I was going from that and playing other games, it was jarring. Mm-hmm. Especially going to Destiny, which is a good looking game in its own right, but dated and not trying to do what this is doing. Right. But like, I was just fucking blown away. And then the other thing I noticed is, with the, like photo modes that games usually have.
Mm-hmm.
Like Spider-Man 2 is a good example. If you go into photo mode and you're running around the town, you can move the camera all around.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all in game. And then if you go into photo mode, during one of the cutscenes, that camera is pretty much locked. This game is not cutscenes, because in the cutscene, when you go into photo mode, you've got free range and there isn't this noticeable tick. Like, it just feels like the entire game is one of the best looking games ever made, all in game, all in engine. Like, there isn't this noticeable cut. And it kind of surprised me, because I've never really been able to do that before. And I spent a decent amount of time in the photo mode, just kind of looking at stuff, because I was really, really blown away by it.
I never really mess with photo modes. It's not my thing. I don't care about it. Unless it's hilarious. Like, there's something funny that I can take a picture of, I will do that. But outside of that, it's just not really my cup of tea. But I think that that's sweet, that's there for people that are into it, for sure.
So we discussed before whether this game needed a sequel. I think that's kind of an interesting thing to try to talk about, where the first game really focuses on her internal struggle, like a lot of mental health stuff surrounding that. And the second game, while those things are still there, the internal struggle is more like that's just a constant, but it's no longer quite the fight that the first game was, if I remember the first game well enough. But it just felt like they had to kind of moved on, which I think is the right decision, because you kind of already tried to navigate some of that internal stuff. You still have plenty of voices in your head, and they're having that internal dialogue. But where they went with it was essentially her village in the first game had been slaughtered by the Northmen. So this was like, she's like, well, I'm going to go get them. So she went and got herself captured and got on a boat and was heading that way. And that's kind of how the game starts. And it's like, it's fine, I guess. It's not I can at least understand the logic, I guess. They didn't have to invent a completely new reason. Like, it was like, oh, well, yeah, she probably is mad at those people from the first game, so it's fine.
I'm going to go to Iceland to take them out.
And so you go through, you have a pretty lengthy intro sequence like the first game, but I think the first game it was better for me. I kind of thought it was a little too long, that first initial, like,
the shipwreck
crashing
sequence
of the boat and then climbing up the mountain. It does a pretty good job of like setting the environment, but at a certain point I was kind of like, I'm ready to, like, let's pick this up a bit.
Yeah, I agree.
But where we get to is that you tell me, the combat is largely unchanged.
I would say that it is a downgrade, if anything, from the first game.
Interesting.
They're very similar in their execution, but the first game would throw like multiple enemies at you at once. That does not happen at all in this game. You fight one enemy at a time. And, that might be, you could argue that maybe it's better that way because you're just focused. And there were points of frustration when you were ganged up on in the first game. And the way that the camera is orientated, you would struggle sometimes to see the dude that was like behind your back hitting you. Right. But yeah, it's a downgrade, I would say, personally, from the first game's combat. It is, again, gorgeous. It's beautiful. The animations are incredible the first time you see them, but then there's a lot of reused animations in relation to combat where you're like, that just like, if you're going to go through, and there isn't like a large amount of combat scenarios in this game, period.
No.
So like, if you're going to go through the trouble of like animating all this stuff out, like it should probably be unique for every single encounter. And there is like a lot of reused kind of sequences that happen in combat. So it's a big disappointment in my mind. And like, I guess we'll just say this broadly. I think this game is a big disappointment. I do not like this game very much.
Interesting.
And I think that there are so many reasons why I don't like it. And I really like the first one. And we can get into those, but yeah, I think that this is a massive failure and it's really sad. But I just don't think this game is particularly good. It's very good looking, but I don't think it's a very good game.
It's a difficult game to like compare to just like, I think I was texting and I was just like, it just feels awkward to compare it to other games because it's not even attempting to do that. Like the depth of the depth in the combat is not there, and it would have been nice if it was, even if like I totally understand and I have a skill tree, stuff like that, but the parry, like you could have had a better combat parry mechanics and tighter fighting, where this one, like I got through most of the game just by dashing and then attacking, and like the choreography is incredible.
Yeah, definitely.
About the best you've ever seen of like dynamic fights. You say the first time, but like you see some of these things and you're just like, it feels very real. She's a pretty vulnerable character, while quite good at killing people. Like she's not this superhero in the game,
right?
And her vulnerability really shows through, and in the choreography of all these fights, and just even out of the fights, it's really a spectacle to behold. And it's frustrating because there are bars that they've still raised in this game, as if you look at certain aspects, but as a whole, you're like, but like
visually is the only thing, in my opinion, that they've raised the bar on. Everything else, I think, it's a downgrade from the first game. Fundamentally, a lot of this shit doesn't work in the second game.
I mean,
that worked in the first game.
The motion capture stuff is some of the best that's ever been done.
I agree. That's what I'm saying. That's the only thing that I can highlight.
Wrapping that up in visuals.
It's just like, it's a beautiful game, and they deserve credit. They obviously put a lot of time and effort into that, but they did not spend the time or effort in making a better game. Like a sequel, fundamentally, should be better in my mind. It should be advancing. Maybe better is the wrong thing to say. It should be advancing the formula in tangible ways. And that is not here in this game across the board. It is a very pretty game that is dumbed down in a lot of ways. And the setup of the first game and, her dealing with mental health works because it's a very isolating experience. That is not the way this game works. And it comes off as cheap, rote, and really kind of a jumbled mess, because there's a lot of like character interaction in this game where that was not present in the first game. This was like a very, isolated game where she was kind of dealing with these inner demons of this mental health issue that she has. Whereas now you go on this like journey with like a bunch of fucking characters, and like they're all well voiced and they look great and the acting is great. It's all good. It's all top notch from that perspective. But the mental health aspect of the game is completely, I think, undercut with the fact that I just got annoyed a lot of the times, because it would just be like, there would be a dialogue between Senua and a character, and then in the background there's these voices, and it's just like, this is too much. It's a mess. This doesn't work. And like, it didn't take me really that long to come to that conclusion. Initially, I was like, the prospect of having more interaction with different characters and things like that would be cool. But not for this thing, in my opinion. I think that it doesn't work that well. And I just think ultimately, like, the story's not good in this game. Like, the motivation that you highlighted is fine, and like, it makes sense, like you said, but it's just a jumbled mess. You're like, we got to go kill some giants now. And it's like, what the fuck? And then the ending of this game in particular, like the big aha moment, is so lame, in my opinion. We won't spoil it here, but I just think that it's fucking so lame, predictable. And yeah, dude, like, I have never had like such a quick turnaround on an experience. And I think it really boils down to, this was something that was like reported in Eurogamer last month, but Tam Antonides, I believe is his name. He was the creative head of Ninja Theory. He left early on in development of Hellblade 2. And that wasn't reported until last month. So apparently Eurogamer, I'm pretty sure, went to interview them and they were like, where the fuck is Tam? And they were like, yeah, he left like years ago. And we're like, what? Like, what are we talking about here, dude? So I think that you have to give him a lot of credit. He is credited in the credits for contributing to writing some of the story. But I don't think that this game is good. And I mean, you could argue that maybe it has something to do with the fact that he was like, see you fucking later, I'm done, so dude, so disappointed in this thing whole time.
I was still fine with the internals of the voices in your head. I liked some of there was more. They were able to use it to second guess characters that they're talking to you, and that I found pretty interesting because you're meeting these characters and deciding how much trust you can put in them, and then you have maybe conflicting voices in your head going both ways. That is something that is pretty interesting and could be done well and even better than what they've done here. So I don't really have any issue with that. I generally I play this game in probably 3 or 4 sittings or something like that.
Yeah, probably the same for me.
I never really wanted to play it for longer than that. It's not a long game, and it kind of felt long, which I was really kind of conflicted in my head because I was just like, after I killed the second giant, I was like, cool, the game's done, and then it's like, well, no, we still got to go, and I was like, kind of felt like I was kind of done. But
that whole through line story, it's not well executed in my opinion, because like she's got this goal to go and take out the Northmen, and then she gets there and then people are getting eaten by giants and draugrs are all over the place, and it's like, oh, I guess we're gonna spend the entire game doing this instead of going after the people that we were originally here to take out. I just think it's bad. Like I don't know. And then we were talking about like again, like the mechanics of the game have not changed. It's the exact same shit. Like from a puzzle perspective, there is one new type of puzzle in the game. Yeah. Everything else was in the first game.
The rune stuff, when they led with it, I was like, oh, really?
It's the same shit.
Are we really still doing that? I liked when you're going through that cave to get to the hidden ones. I think their names are.
Yeah.
There was a good hour and a half section in there that I thought was pretty good, that I enjoyed through that game, but it didn't continue necessarily.
I enjoyed the cave sequence until I found and realized that the cave sequence is the exact same thing in the first game. Whereas the torch is like pivotal or a big part of that gameplay section. And like, there's always waterfalls that are going to extinguish the torch. It's the same thing from the first game.
I have no memory of that.
Yeah, that sequence happens in the first game where she has like these creatures chasing after her, and if the light is extinguished, then they will kill you like pretty much immediately, right? And the hook that like sets in like tense moments is there's waterfalls you have to go through to extinguish the flame, and then you're left helpless, and you gotta navigate your way through it. It was cool the first time, but then the second time I did it in this game, I was like, you guys just did the same thing over again. Like the first part of the cave sequence that you're talking about, I do think is all right, but it's just the same thing. It just seems like I would be shocked if someone like Jason Schreier or somebody like that will dig in to what's been going on at this studio, because like there's a lot in this game that's just the same idea done exactly the same. And it's like, how long did you spend making this game? Like clearly you spent a long time on the visual elements of this game, but you didn't spend that much time on the gameplay elements. You were probably just like, let's just do the same thing over again and call it a day. So it's just a huge disappointment.
I'm worried. Where do they go? Because it feels like they're not done with this game, with this series. They've built out they've added in order to do that, you would have to add people. And they added a cast, and some of those characters I will name that many of them, but I like that guy that I forget his name. Lord, they're all their Norse names or shit. It's like I mean, that's kind of compelling, but I just don't know, like, if they go and make a Hellblade 3, I don't know that they're going to get the okay to do that.
No.
And I don't know that is what I necessarily want them to do. They need to go to the drawing board and figure this out. What's really puzzling, and I mean, a lot of time has gone by, so like studios change, who they have there changes, but whatever you feel about Devil May Cry, the combat in that game, there's something there.
Yeah.
Like there is something there to the combat. They made one of those that's like, yeah, they've got the skills to do some stuff like that. And it's kind of unfortunate that, like, obviously this was never gonna be a Devil May Cry, but like, you just didn't even, like, did that guy just he gone?
Yeah,
Because
it's to meme Antonides. Yeah, he's gone
because it's just not even remotely like. Yeah, there's just no depth there. So for a game side, it's tough. I'm higher on the game than you. I generally found it fine. I wouldn't say it's going to be on my list at the end of the year.
No way.
And maybe some of that is more of just the visual spectacle paired with relatively not a huge game, where I was kind of just like pretty immersed, I guess, like through a lot of the different story beats, and like as you climb through these caves, like there's a part where it's really tight and she's crawling. And I think that is really claustrophobic in a way that was a pretty well done scene. And it's these set pieces that they've set up that I think they have a skill there, but they need to work on a lot of other things if they want to actually compete, if that's the goal.
Yeah.
And I don't know what
this game is not a good game, but it's good at doing, it's theming. The visuals are great. And yeah, set pieces are not the problem here. There's some really cool sequences in this game. The stuff that stuck out most to me in particular was all of the interactions with the giants. I thought those were cool. Mm-hmm. The first giant that you encounter, like, there's a close-up sequence where you see her face for the first time and you're like, oh my God, she's terrifying. So really effective from that perspective. And I when I saw the first giant, I was like pretty much into it. I was like, yeah, this is a smart thing to do. I like where they're going. And then they just fumble the bag so fucking hard. Like the combat encounters that are like, this is another thing, a downgrade from the previous game. They were like boss fights in the first game. Mm-hmm. There is really only one like combat centric boss, which is the final boss of the game. The rest is just like more small scale encounters with like kind of cannon fodder enemies. And then, they had the opportunity to do some really cool things with these giant fights. But they function the exact same way. Like, one of them involves running behind walls while lava flies out, and it protects you from the lava, and you just run from wall to wall until you get to the end. And you're like, okay, like that wasn't super great, but like fine. And then the second giant you encounter, it's just water this time that you have to avoid, but it's essentially the same thing. And it's just like, this is bad. Like, what are you guys doing over there? What were you thinking in terms of like making this compelling? And then like, you don't fight the giants. Like there's not a combat encounter with them, which could have been really cool. There wasn't a ton of boss fights in the first game, but there was like 3 or 4 that you fought, and there's just nothing here. So like, that's the thing across the board. I just feel like it's either the exact same as the first game with like no evolution, or a downgrade. And so when you look at it in its totality, it's just like fucking puzzling. So puzzling to me. That they thought this was gonna be the right thing to do.
It's crazy. I don't know. I'm a little worried about what happens to that studio and what they do. I just
well, supposedly they're working on 2 unannounced games currently, which that doesn't really mean shit. Like, I've seen people in the industry being like, well, that means that they'll be around presumably for a while. And it's like,
Oh, it doesn't.
Until Microsoft says, hold my fucking beer, and is like, yeah, you guys are done. Like, they haven't even announced the games. Like, they could be poor, like tracking internally poorly. At which case, Microsoft's going to come in and probably shut that shit down. So I think the bigger thing to talk about is like, the Tam thing, him leaving, and it not. I don't want to speculate and say that they intentionally didn't announce that he left. And like, obviously, if you like follow him on LinkedIn or something like that, you could probably see that he left. But just Microsoft's acquired studios having these like big name people, visionary people leaving the studios, right? Tam, fucking Shinji Mikami, like it just seems like.
Yeah, Todd Howard's still there.
Yeah,
he's the one that needs to go.
He's the one that needs to go. Seriously, there's just a lot of moving and shaking with these studios, and you have to ask the question, why is that? You know what I mean?
For sure.
And I mean, I think the best thing to kind of like highlight is just people have got to be scared. Like, people have got to be. They are working in a scary situation where the rug might be pulled out from under them and they lose their jobs. And that is not conducive to like making good quality video games, in my opinion, or anything for that matter. If you're fucking stressed all day long, your mind's elsewhere. You can't focus on your work. And so, dude, Microsoft's got a problem. Like, I think that they desperately need to win 100%. And like, yeah, some people reviewed this thing well, but there is a lot of people that are on my side with this, where they're like, this thing is not good. And like, people that generally enjoyed the first game, I was one of them. I was really, after playing the first one, I was very excited for what they were going to do with this. The prospect of it being evolved and changing things that maybe were not so great in the first game.
Sure, you
give them a pass, but now it's like, no pass. You get no more passes.
At the end of the day, it's just they made Hellblade 1.5.
Yeah,
essentially.
Yep.
And I guess I would be interested in what someone thinks of the game if they never played the first, but I have no idea.
I think that it would probably be pretty underwhelming for most people, because I think that what they did in the first one was the mental health stuff in particular, the voices in her head. I think that really was set up well in the first game, and it's not really talked about as much in the second game. There was one thing that starts at the beginning where I thought that was going to be very cool. They essentially allude to the fact that Senua is a seer, which is like, a historical kind of like magic or person that has like perception abilities, whatever you want to call it. And I thought, well, that's cool. Like, that's a cool thing that they maybe are going to go that route with it. And then they just don't address it at all anymore after the initial, you potentially are a seer. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I agree. I was like, cool. All right. And then it's just like, oh, that's just the next game, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. I just don't want another one of these. I felt strongly about it after I played the first one. Yep. I was like, there's maybe no other game I can think of that doesn't need a sequel. Like, it just doesn't. Like, that thing, if you left it as it was, like, you got a winner on your hands. And like, now it's like, this thing is just not it, dude.
Yeah. Womp womp. Well, it's frustrating. I was really hoping it was going to have just something else, but and even where I still kind of got a decent amount of enjoyment out of it, I if I paid for it, it might feel a little different, I guess.
Yeah, they're selling it for $50,
and I think that would maybe change my tune a little bit.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Yeah, you can't complain too much when you're playing it for, relatively low investment.
Sure.
But dude, it's I'm just like so disappointed and kind of like bummed out by the fact that it's just not it.
All right. Well, let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll try the 99 pineapple and see how that goes. Okay, and we're back, and Jared he's just sampled the 99 pineapples, and you look happy.
I don't like it very much.
No,
It's it burns quite a bit, Nick.
Why is this happening? I don't know that this is a good product, Jared. I don't know. Wow.
It tastes like pineapples, kind of. So it's got that going for it. Oh, it's my God.
Pineapples that really hate you.
Oh, angry pineapples.
Ugh.
We're going to make a cocktail with it, though,
Okay.
Nick.
You need a lot of that coconut rum.
Oh, my God. Like, we drink pretty high proof stuff here. There's something about that it burns in the wrong way.
Yeah, that makes me sad inside. That's just not
oh my gosh.
Don't recommend doing that for the people at home.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we did that.
Mark it off the list.
Oh my God. All right. I wanted to try it. I never did because of no good reason. But you got tell me about Crow Country, and
yeah,
presumably this is a game that you're gonna be higher on than Hellblade.
Yeah, I love this game.
Okay.
So yeah, Crow Country, little indie game that just came out recently. It is essentially a love letter to like classic Resident Evils. I mean, that's the best way to describe it. With this just incredibly good visual style, in my opinion, that is very retro in its execution. It doesn't look like a original Resident Evil game. It honestly reminds me a lot more of like a Final Fantasy, like the original Final Fantasy VII, like the way that the graphics look. But it's super interesting from the perspective of the setting. So this game takes place. You're this character that is a police officer named Mara that shows up at this theme park that's called Crow Country. And it's just like outside of Atlanta. And she is showing up because she's tasked with finding the CEO of Crow Country, the owner of Crow Country's daughter. And so she just shows up at this park, and the park is abandoned, essentially, in disrepair. And the whole game kind of centers around you traversing the different kind of sections of this theme park while fighting, zombies, like question mark. It doesn't really ever quite explain what they are specifically. It does kind of, but it's pretty vague in its explanation. But yeah, zombies.
Okay.
And the hook with this thing, in my opinion, is it's got the retro aesthetic down, and it's just beautiful in its way, like the way that it is. Like I think that it's a really nice looking game, even though it's like very primitive in its execution. But the real big hook here is like, let's take all of the good things about those original Resident Evil games, like Dino Crisis, those types of games, but then make them like actually like the character control well. And so the controls are very modern in their execution. It feels really good to move the character around. Aiming and shooting is pretty good as well. And so, yeah, you're running around Crow Country.
And is this ammo scarcity and puzzles and the whole deal?
It's survival horror 100%, like a love letter to like original Resident Evil games, specifically, I would say. So ammo is very scarce. You're solving pretty good puzzles. That's one of the things that I think is notable about this thing is the puzzles are really well done, in my opinion. And you can go back and look at some of those puzzles from the original Resident Evil games, and while they're cool, they're pretty primitive primitive. This kind of updates those and makes them a little bit more compelling. They make you think quite a bit, but it's all like environmental puzzles from the perspective of like most of the solutions are going to be found in the environment in one way or another. There are clues that might not be immediately noticeable to you unless you're really looking, but most of the puzzles will have some sort of solution kind of in the environment for you to find, which I really, really like. So that's kind of like the basics of it. It's a super short game. It's about 5 hours to complete. So that's a positive. It's like also, you know, after you beat it, you get like fun, you know, items just like Resident Evil would do. There's a Crowzuka is what
like
it's called.
Skins and stuff.
Yeah, skins. And then like I said, there's a Crowzuka that literally just shoots crows, like unlimited ammo for it. And every time you shoot, it goes over and over and over again. And it is fantastic.
You have to start New Game Plus to do that? Or?
Yeah. You start a new, well, not necessarily New Game Plus. You just start another run of the game. And you once you completed it once, then there's an option in the options that allows you to toggle special items on and off. But it's definitely like a speedrunner game for sure. Like I'm sure people are trying to beat it as fast as they possibly can. And I loved every second of it. I think the length of it is just right. Like I said, it's quick. It's 5 hours. It's not particularly challenging. You're not really looking for challenge. You can there are difficulty sliders, so you make it more difficult if you want to. But yeah, I mean, is
there a compelling narrative in this thing?
Yeah. The story's actually pretty cool. It centers around the theme park and Crow. I can't remember his first name. I want to say Harlan Crow, but that's not right. He owns the theme park and also is like this mysterious figure that you're throughout the game you're finding like letters that he's written and different, you know, correspondence, and you're kind of like unraveling what is going on at Crow Country, right? And it really is centered around this mining operation that's taking place underneath the theme park, unbeknownst to like anyone. So like the theme park is just like a front essentially for this business of mining this material from this thing they called the root, which is like this giant tree plant thing, but it's like a sentient plant that is in the ground in a hole underneath the theme park, which is this like hole to like another dimension is what it seems like.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, he gets like in big trouble with this because he's like doing this mining operation, and the feds start coming after him for it. And then that's like what facilitates the beginning of this game, right? Everything's been shut down because of the fact that they found out about this illegal mining operation going on. So, and there is a big twist at the end of this game that I think is actually executed really well. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, what? Like, that's crazy. So very satisfying from that perspective. I think that the story is good. Like, I think they do enough with just like the letters and things like that you're finding in the environment that give you like a really solid understanding of what's going on with, you know, these characters. And so from that perspective, I think it works.
No voice acting. It's
very primitive in its execution. Again, on a lot of different levels, but yeah, just bumping up the control of the character. Like, these are not tank controls. Like, she feels really good. The best thing that happens in this game is there's it's fucking hilarious, but there's, you know, a series of keys. So in the environment, there are 3 different keys that, you know, all unlock corresponding doors. There's a bronze, a silver, and a gold key, right? And obviously you get the bronze first, silver, and then gold. But that allows you to obviously explore different parts that you weren't able to earlier in the game. But the silver key unlocks a trunk in the parking lot of the theme park where you're parked. And When you open it, you find a pair of running shoes, sneakers, running sneakers. This game is set in the 90s, by the way. It's like 1990 is when it's supposed to be going on. And so she finds these shoes and she's like, oh, they're just my size. And it increases your run speed. So you like start fucking cooking. But the best part about it is that every single step she takes, her sneakers squeak. So it's just like squeak, 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 squeak. And it made me laugh so fucking hard when I found the running shoes. But they're great. Also like hugely beneficial and helpful because it at least doubles or triples your run speed, your movement speed. Damn. But it's so funny. There's a lot of secret like items and areas to kind of find that are a little bit more difficult, and you don't have to explore them. They're like all optional. And what I like about them is like they are worth seeing because they're actually like designed and clever, just like the other aspects of the more important areas that you have to explore to complete the game, right? Yeah. And that's the cool thing about this is like I haven't been to a theme park in a really long time, but as a kid I really liked theme parks. I was a big fan of them.
Sure. You can take my daughter. Take her to Disneyland. I don't want to go.
I don't like Disneyland. Disneyland's not my favorite, but no, I'm not going to do that. But yeah, so it's like separated into like different worlds essentially and there's just these like anthropomorphic crows everywhere because it's called Crow Country, which is fantastic, like stuffed crows and crow animatronics and shit like that. So it's just funny from that perspective. But the individual zones are separated and they're different themed. One of them is like an ocean theme. So when you're in that environment, it's like under the sea, and it's really cool from that perspective. And there's like a fairy, like kind of like mystical high fantasy area that you explore. There's an arcade that you go to that you have to solve a puzzle in the arcade to get all of the arcade machines like up and running with electricity. But then you can play all of the arcade games in the game, which I thought was like, they're very simplistic, like little mini games. But there's a puzzle surrounding the arcade machines that you have to solve to progress the story, which requires you to like double a score from one cabinet to the next, which is really cool. Like that gives you like kind of a good idea of some of these puzzles, right? Yeah. They really did a good job with them for the most part, I think. And I have nothing but good things to say about this thing. I really, really enjoyed it. And I kind of wish that it was like 10 hours long. I kind of wish that I was still playing it because largely I enjoyed most of my time with this thing quite a bit.
The theme park setting's kind of like a no-brainer. Like it allows you to have such an excuse to have variety in the setting very easily. Right. So it's just like, that absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. It and just the way that it's done, it's just done really well, and it's very funny. There's a haunted section as well, like a haunted mansion type of thing, and it's very, very well done from that perspective. So I would recommend this thing. I don't think it's going to be for everyone. You really have to have, I feel like, some level of nostalgia for those like original, survival horror games from the 90s. But if you're like an old fuck like we are, you'll probably enjoy this.
I would guess this is like $30 or
I think it's cheaper than that. I think it's like $20.
Okay.
I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it's 20. But yeah, just a really small team that did this as well. I mean, the credits are not very long. It's like a smaller team of people that did it. I think it's two brothers that, are like the heads of the studio. And I don't know if they've done anything else, but it seems like people really like this thing. And I think it's got all of the kind of trappings for a recipe of like cult status, for sure, cult following status. So and I really was disappointed playing through this, and I was like, man, this game is like everything that I wanted for Signalis last year. And they're drastically different games, don't get me wrong, but like Signalis is definitely leaning into that like school survival horror thing, and then just having like the most batshit like incomprehensible story known to fucking man. That shit was just so confusing.
What did we play the previous year?
We played Soma.
Yeah, the Amnesia guy.
Yeah.
I fucking like that. I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, I really like that Soma game.
That game is good. That game is really good.
Cool.
So I'd like to play some of their other stuff, like
sure.
What is Amnesia?
There's 2 different Amnesias. I think
Yeah.
A sequel, or I don't know if it's a full sequel, but
Yeah.
iteration of it.
Yeah, I think people really like those games, and I've never really messed around with them. So, but yeah, go check this thing out. I really think it's got something that's worth checking out for sure. And you know, super small investment of time.
What'd you say?
5 hours. Yeah. I finished it in a sitting. I just sat down
and played it.
And I had like, I should say I started like the night before or 2 nights before that. I played like the intro sequence, and then the second playthrough I just blew through it. Yeah. I didn't get stuck on a lot of it either. Like some of the puzzles took me some time to figure out, but I wasn't like completely stumped and like had to reference a guide. Yeah. Again, I just think that they do a good job of like kind of showing you, you know, the solutions in the environment. So cool game, good game.
There's a puzzle game that came out. It's like Laser Eyes something.
I heard.
I think it's absolutely not your jam, but I might check it out.
I heard that it requires you to have a graph paper. And as soon as I heard that, I've been listening to some podcasts talk about this game, and like there's been a couple of dudes that I've heard that have been like, oh, it's like the best thing ever. It's so good. And like the thing that I love the most about it is like I have to take notes. And I'm like, why is that your favorite thing about a video game? I don't understand. I don't want to fucking take notes in a video game. Like that's not fun to me. And I fundamentally don't understand the person that's like, I'm having a good time jotting down these notes because this fucking puzzle is so incomprehensibly difficult.
Maybe I'll have to check it out and just circle back. I think we should maybe talk about Destiny 2. The final shape comes out Tuesday.
Yeah.
I think we've briefly, both of us kind of played a little bit of Destiny 2 in the last few days just to kind of.
Yeah, I put about 15 hours in the last little bit.
So I'm glad I did it before the DLC came out, just to get through the muddy weeds of like, what the fuck is this game these days? Because it's a lot. I don't believe I've played it for 2 years. And
we missed the Witch Queen, and then we missed Beyond Light and Lightfall. So 3 expansions we've missed.
And so there's an enormous amount of content. Like you've got all sorts of stuff to do. Who knows if you're doing it in the right order? And then there's a lot of different things with classes and armor and like weapon modifications and stuff. It's all very interesting. I don't know that we need to talk about it for a long time or anything, but we're coming back in, and we will come back and see what we think of this thing.
Yeah, I have definitely, I put a lot of time into Destiny 1 and 2.
My hour count's at 156 hours on Steam.
Yeah, my Steam is at 80 hours, but I know that I put at least like 150 on the console version of it when it initially came out. So, obviously we're not like noobs, but it kind of feels like you're a noob jumping back into this thing because you just have no idea what's going on, and there is like a lot of new mechanics and things to kind of wrap your mind around. I will say that they do maybe one of the worst jobs of explaining all of it, like ever. I just don't understand, like, if you're, especially with the model that Bungie has taken with this thing, the fact that there is just like really no good primers in game to kind of understand what these new mechanics are doing is puzzling and crazy to me. And one of the things that I've seen that's like the counter to that is like there's this whole system that is like it's a number system, and it goes from 1 to 11, and the whole idea is that there are like tasks per level that you have to complete for your character. And this is Bungie's way of onboarding new players. So, the first step in that sequence when you're level 1 in this process is going to have you do like very basic things. And then, by the time, in theory, you get to 11, you have fully absorbed and will hopefully understand what the game is wanting you to do and how you're going to do it to be successful. The problem is that system exists and there's a screen where you can look at it. And I went and looked at it and I was like, what the fuck is this? Why is this a thing? Like, and then I was like reading some of the things and it was like very basic things. And like the game, I should say I logged in after I like bought the updates that I didn't have. And I wasn't at level 1. I was at like level 6.
Yeah. I think it's the same.
And it's like, what is this? Is this like a seasonal thing? Like, what is the purpose of this? And then I had to go online and it's just like, yeah, that's how they are teaching you like the mechanics. And it's like, cool. Maybe, I don't know, but let me know. Just let me know that that's what you want me to do, Bungie. It's fucking crazy, dude.
Well, it's crazy because also like just with it sounds like we both had to buy the same expansions if you wanted to have everything, which you didn't necessarily have to do, but I did. But then it picks and chooses when I log in. Half the time it's like, instead of bringing me to the screen, it just like starts in on a cutscene. A long cutscene, pretty good cutscenes for a lot of it, for what they are, and then like half the time sends me into a mission for one of the expansions. Right. I don't even know which expansion because there's 3 that I haven't played, and I was like, cool, I'm doing this one now. Which one is it? Oh, the Queen's here. Well, I don't even know how the Queen's here because I never did the Witch Queen, and I believe that's when she comes, where Marasov comes back. I really like that character. I've always really liked that character. I still don't know how she's here. Yeah. She died. She drove her ship into fucking Oryx's ship in the Taken King in Destiny 1. Yeah. I don't know how she's here.
I don't understand the Destiny story, and like I don't like it very much. I don't think it's very good. And I know that there are fans of it, and like, yeah, you're not the only person that likes it, but every single time I try to get into it, I'm like, I watch the cutscene and I get like maybe a couple minutes in and I'm like, skip. I don't care. I'm just here to shoot fucking guns and get the loots and yeah, whatever. But yeah, it's like I saw like a pretty prominent YouTuber that like his whole career is based around Destiny content, talking about like the player experience for like either a returning player or a like brand new player. And it's like, yeah, there's 1 through 6 of like the expansions. And like, you would think that it would be like 1, 2, 3 to 6. But the way that it actually works is like 4, 2, 6, 1. And so it's just a jumbled mess. And like the fact that they don't have some sort of like through line at this point in time with like some of the newer or some of the older expansions, I should say, is crazy to me because it just feels so. I had the exact same thing. I did the first mission of the Witch Queen expansion because the game forced me to. I didn't say I want to do it. No, it was just like, hey, you're going to do this now. And then right after that, I saw some fuck on a fucking surfboard that showed up and was like, hey, what's up? Let's do this. And then I'm like, what is happening? Like, I just started the Witch Queen. I would like to like get through that content and then like pick up where I left off. And like, to be fair, you can do that when you get through that first initial sequence, but like, there's gotta be a better way. Some of this implementation that Bungie has rolled out for this is like head scratching. Like maybe that's an understatement. It seems like for a studio with as many, a storied history and the resources that they have or had, I guess maybe is the better thing to say. It's crazy that they haven't figured this out.
I just am blown away. Like I get it. Like they're clearly saying like, hey, we want anyone to be able to pick up this game and play with their friends. Like doesn't matter where you're at essentially.
Right.
But I also just wish that there was a little button or a flag that I could just be like, can I play it like a normal person and play it in order?
Yeah.
Like can I play it in order so I understand what's going on? And I don't know how I'm going to approach Tuesday because like the new DLC comes out, so I should probably be playing that, but I'm still going to have all these other quests that I would presumably like to play through and like check those boxes. I'm a big fan of checking boxes.
Yeah.
And I don't really know how I'm going to do that yet.
But here's the thing. Destiny is still a very fun game to play, especially at a high frame rate. The game feels really fucking good. And as soon as you start playing it again, you're like, oh yeah, this feels great. And like they nailed it in a lot of ways in terms of those mechanics. It's just everything surrounding it. Like it's not an uncomplicated thing. It's a very complex, complicated game that asks a lot of its players to understand the mechanics and what's going on to have any like level of success. And it just is a jumbled mess like right now. And maybe Tuesday they're going to flip on a switch that say, hey, we've been working on like tutorial systems, like onboard players and get people in the right frame of mind. But I'm pretty sure that it's just going to be like Rahul will call me and be like, hey, Guardian, you want to come on over here and I can decipher some new things for you. And it's like, I guess why isn't this better?
I'm kind of glad we're talking about it now. So then when we can, I mean, presumably we'll get this behind us and we'll look back and be like, yeah, that was bad. But now, I'm on board. I understand what's going on. And we'll be able to talk about where the game is in future shows. I can have a hard time believing it'll just be on one show because these games are a lot. I mean, if we're going to do it, I'd probably want to engage with a raid and stuff like that and see if people in Discord want to play stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. The problem I think is that a lot, and it's not just Bungie that has this problem, but a lot of these studios have the audacity to think that like, of course you should understand this shit because this is all you play. Like forever. You're not playing anything else. Like you didn't stop. Like you're just going to play Destiny. Like that's all you're going to play. And like, there are people that are out there. We are definitely not those people. And so it's like, it's so puzzling to me that this is the way that all this shit works in Destiny 2. But, it doesn't seem like I think people are very stoked about the new update. But and it seems like the general consensus from digging into things a little bit here and there over the last couple of days that people really like the Witch Queen, the expansion. Like people were very happy with that. And then since then, not so much. The newest expansion before the final shape comes out, like I looked at the reviews on it and it was like mostly negative. And it was like 7,000 or 8,000 reviews that were mostly negative. And I'm like, God damn, what are you doing over here, Bungie?
Have you seen the character, the Witness?
Yeah, he's got it looks like he's got cum for hair or something like that. I don't know.
He reminds me, and I don't know if you'll remember, like in The Simpsons, they've done like ghosts. It reminds me of the way The Simpsons draws ghosts. I look at him.
Mr.
Green, like, maybe it's aliens in The Simpsons. Anyway, it's something where I was just like, hey, The Simpsons did it.
There was a scene of a hilarious episode of The Simpsons where Mr. Burns was getting like booster shots of something from Doctor. What's the doctor? Anyways, he's getting shots and he'd be like, time for a booster, and his eyes would get all big. And they thought that he was like, and it was like a riff on X-Files where they thought that he was like some extraterrestrial being, but it was just Mr. Burns high on as a kite in the woods. Which
maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Actually.
It's pretty funny. Yeah. So
I don't know. We'll
Dr. Nick, I think is it? Hi, Dr. Nick. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah.
Well, in 2 weeks, we'll be experts on all things Destiny.
No, we won't. That's a lie.
Figure it out.
We will not be experts. We will not even be close to experts. I know that we do have some regular Destiny players in the Discord. So please fucking let us know the things that we need to do and the things that we should prioritize, because like that isn't also fleshed out at all. And like, I guess the argument from Bungie's perspective is like, it's all viable and like worth doing, but no, it's not. It's not. there are things that are like objectively not worth doing anymore because of some of the policies and procedures that they rolled out in relation to like sunsetting things, and like power creeping certain weapons. Like, as far as I understand, like the weapons from like the base game, like some of those really good weapons from like the earlier games, like nobody uses them. They're just in people's vaults. But like
the tractor cannon,
like things like that, because the weapons that they have rolled out since then are just like objectively 10 times better. That like there's no point in using them, and I think that sucks.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a problem.
That's a problem.
If you're gonna create one of these things where you have this huge library of all these things, you would like it to have a little more of some of them still being viable.
Well, it's
in
like,
some way.
yeah, like from a build diversity perspective, if you have
Yeah.
all of these assets that are in your game and like maybe half of them are just not used in the meta at all, and like certain weapons you can't level up past like 1600, and so it's like,
That's
why?
And that's lame. That should probably not be like that. But all right, that's gonna do it, I think. Unless you got anything else to add.
I do not, Nick.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. I guess we're supposed to tell them to like, subscribe, comment, because it's on YouTube now.
Do we have to do that?
I don't know.
I don't know if we have to do that or not.
Okay. Well,
but you should like, comment, and subscribe just this one time at least.
You should join the Discord is what you should do. And the link will be on the main Salt City YouTube page. There's a link for it, or in the show notes if you're listening to just the audio. That's going to do it. Take it easy, guys.